Senator Natale.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I too would like to commend the work of our spokesperson on this issue, Senator Larissa Waters, who has been a tour de force on the issue of protecting our environment and in fact using our environmental laws to enable that we continue to protect the wonderful Australian environment. When it comes to this specific bill, it's so bureaucratic, so dense, that you almost need a hatchet to get through the thicket of bureaucratic complexity. The Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Amendment Bilateral Agreement Implementation Bill 2014 says a lot, doesn't it? That's why what we've got is we've got a debate that's been reduced to a few slogans. You know, we hear words like streamlining and duplication, certainty, abolishing bureaucracy. We hear about green tape, red tape. Look, all I know is that this government's given everyone the blues. We hear about a one-stop shop. What is a one-stop shop? I mean, if this bill is effectively creating a one-stop shop, it's got a drive-through so that any proponent can come into the shop without getting out of the car and have their approval waved through without having to do so much as the smallest bit of work. The simple message here is this. This is the simple message. Let's cut through all the nonsense. Let's cut through the slogans, the one-liners. Let's have an honest debate about what's going on here. The Coalition think that environment protection has gone too far. They want to wind it back. They want to make it easier for business. That's the honest debate we need to be having. I mean, let's get beyond this sort of nonsense around, you know, one-stop shops and simplifying, overburdensome regulation. This is simply about whether our Australian environment needs to be protected, or whether those protections should be weakened to allow developments across a number of industries to proceed. That's what it's about. And that's the debate we should be having. John Howard didn't have the same view as this government. That's why these laws were introduced by the former Environment Minister, Robert Hill, because they didn't believe that states would provide the protection that threatened species needed. I mean, that's why these laws were introduced. And I don't think handing over powers to the states is a bad thing because states are evil. There's a reality here. We've got state governments with limited capacity to raise revenue who are always going to favour developments that they see that might bring a few extra dollars to their state. You don't need to look too far. Look at what's going on in New South Wales and some of the scandals that are going on at the moment around the approval of a whole range of developments to know that when state governments are faced with these rivers of gold, they find them very hard to turn down. And that's why we had federal laws introduced, because we recognised that a continent with the worst rate of species extinction anywhere in the world needed to have laws in place at a federal level that recognised the reality of what state governments do when faced with the prospect of a bucket of money through a development proposal or protecting the environment. That's why these laws were introduced. And in my own state of Victoria right now, we're having a debate about the unconventional gas industry. It's a boom that's going on apace. It's a boom that, if it has its way, will turn some of the most productive and important farmland anywhere in the country into an industrial wasteland. I mean, we've got some of the best farms anywhere in the world. We've got wonderful dairy country. We've got a whole range of progressive farmers who are involved in closed-loop systems. who are reutilising a lot of the waste that's produced on their farms. We've got a wonderful agroforestry industry. We've got a recognition that we can have environmental benefits and productive farms going hand in hand. We've got shelter belts being planted to produce shelter for stock, but to also control soil erosion and salinity. Huge biodiversity, bringing in bird species that haven't been seen in areas for a long time, with potentially timber to be harvested down the track. I mean, we've got some great things going on in Western Victoria, and yet here we are looking at an industry that is going to turn this farmland, with its very precious water supply, into an industrial wasteland. And that's why we need these laws. We need these laws because we know that state governments will never stand up for the environment in the way that a federal jurisdiction will. I mean, you only need to look at the current state government in Victoria, Premier Napthine's contribution to the review of the renewable energy target. In the state government's submission, we saw a request from the state government to recognise gas as a renewable resource. Just think about that. A fossil fuel, millions of years in the making, a state government wants an independent panel to recognise that as a renewable resource. You need to look no further than that submission to understand what is driving the Victorian state government right now and what has been the driving force behind many state governments over the decades. Now, what we should be doing is not weakening our protection. We should recognise that we don't have a good record in this country when it comes to protecting our biodiversity. One of the greatest losses of species of any continent anywhere in the world. Instead, what we should be doing is beefing up our protection. Rather than seeking to get rid of the water trigger that was introduced in the last parliament, we should be expanding that to ensure that it's not just coal seam gas, but all unconventional gas that is subject to the water trigger. And why not add a greenhouse trigger to the EPBC Act, so that any further developments that are proposed are tested by that measure? Because after all, there's no greater threat to biodiversity on this planet than the threat of climate change. So this is a very backward looking measure. It undoes the work of previous Liberal governments who recognised these laws were important, and I have to say it's hard to believe that here I am standing up defending the environmental record of the previous Howard government. At the time I thought things couldn't get much worse, but I was wrong. They are getting worse. This is not a debate about regulation, it's not a debate about red tape or green tape, it's not a debate about whether we have a one-stop shop. It's actually a debate about whether we want to protect our environment. That's what this is about. And we've got one party that says we need to make things easier for big business, and we've got those of us on this side of the chamber who think our environment needs to be protected. And the reason we're not having the debate in those terms is because the Coalition know what the Australian government's, the Australian people's view of protecting the environment is. They know that when measures come forward that mean we're going to put further pressure on our precious natural environment, they don't like it. And that's why we've had to have this phony debate, this maze of complexity about what these laws actually mean. It's very straightforward. This is a choice between making things easier for big business, and the cost of that is further pressure on our already strained natural environment, or it's actually about protecting what we've got and building on it and making it stronger and those of us on this side of the chamber will always stand on behalf of making sure that our environmental protections are the strongest of any country anywhere in the world.